The galaxy was not what it used to be. It was a broken place, full of scars from wars and disasters. The great empire that once ruled many worlds had collapsed, leaving its people hungry and desperate. This was the new reality for the surviving species each, one struggling to find food, shelter, and hope. Many had lost their homes. Some had lost their families. The universe was a cold, hard place. On a small, isolated human colony, life still went on, though in a much simpler way. The humans here had always been resourceful, and they had learned to survive, even when things seemed hopeless. It was a place where people lived off what they could grow, trade, or scavenge. Among the humans, Ben was known for his small stall. It was a simple stall, but it was something that people in the colony valued deeply. He sold food-rare fruits, dried, meats, and spices. Food wasn't easy to find, and when you could get it, it was worth more than gold. Ben had worked hard to make his stall known. It was his way of contributing to the colony. Many would come to him looking for that little something to get them through the day. They would walk up to his stall with tired eyes, knowing they were lucky if they found what they needed. Despite the hard times, Ben remained hopeful. He had enough to eat, enough to share, and he tried his best to make the most of every day. One morning, as Ben arranged his goods, two figures appeared at the edge of his stall. They were different from the usual customers. They were not human. The first thing Ben noticed was how thin they were, their faces pale and hollow. Their eyes were wide, full of fear and hunger. They looked like they had traveled a long distance, with no place to call home. Ben stood still for a moment, unsure what to make of them. The two girls stepped closer. They were clearly aliens different from the species Ben had seen before. Their skin was a strange shade of blue, and their bodies were slender, fragile. They both wore simple, torn clothing, showing signs of wear from their long journey. Could see the exhaustion on their faces. They didn't look like soldiers or traders. They looked like survivors, and they were hungry. One of the girls, the taller one with bright green eyes, spoke first. Her voice was weak but clear. "Please, we need food," she said, her voice trembling. "We haven't eaten in days. We have nothing to give. You were just starving." Ben could hear the pain in her voice. His heart went out to them. These were not the fierce invaders or ruthless raiders that often came to the colony. These were just two girls who had lost everything. He didn't know much about their species, but it was clear they weren't here to cause trouble. They were here, out of desperation. The second girl, shorter and with soft lavender-colored skin, stepped forward. She looked down, not meeting Ben's eyes. She was too weak to speak. Ben could see the hunger in her eyes, a kind of hunger that went beyond just food. It was a hunger for survival. Ben hesitated. He had seen many people come to his stall asking for food. Most of them offered something in exchange: credits, goods, services. But these girls, they had nothing. Their faces said it all. Ben had been raised to be generous, to help when he could, but this was different. What could he give them? How could he help when they had nothing to offer in return? "Don't have much," Ben said, his voice soft, "but I can give you some food. It's just enough to get you through the next day." The taller girl looked up at him, her eyes filled with relief. "Thank you," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. We can repay you somehow. I promise we will." Ben shook his head, not wanting to make them feel worse. "No. Need to repay me. Just take it. You need it more than I do." As he turned to grab some dried meat and fruit for them, the taller girl spoke again, her voice shaky but firm. "We have nothing to give you in exchange, except ourselves." Ben froze. He turned slowly to face her, unsure of what she meant. The girl took a deep breath, then said, "We don't have any money or goods to offer, but we can offer our bodies. If you help us, we will. We will be yours. We'll do whatever you ask. We will stay and help you." Ben blinked in confusion. Was this a trick? Were they trying to bargain in some way he didn't understand? It was a strange offer, one that didn't feel right. Wasn't sure what she meant, but it didn't sit well with him. "Wait, what do you mean?" he asked carefully, trying to understand. "You don't need to offer anything like that. I'm just giving you food because it's the right thing to do. The taller girl lowered her eyes. We have no choice. Our civilization is gone. We have no home, no family, no way to survive except by bartering whatever we have left. And right now, this is all we can offer. Ben was taken aback. He didn't know what to say. They were clearly desperate, but their offer, it didn't feel right. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about something deeper, something darker. But he couldn't turn them away. They were starving, and Ben had the food to help them. Take the food, he said, his voice soft but firm. God. And keep your promise to yourself. You don't owe me anything. The girls looked at him, surprised by his response. For a moment it felt like they didn't know how to react. They had expected something different. But in that moment, they understood. Ben wasn't trying to take advantage of them. He wasn't using their desperation for his own gain. He was just offering them the help they needed. The two girls accepted the food, thanking Ben once more. As they walked away, their bodies weak but their faces showing a little more hope, Ben couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. He had given them food, but something told him this wasn't the end of the story. The galaxy was broken, and the two girls were only a small part of the larger picture. What would happen next? What kind of future would they all have in this collapsing world? Ben didn't know. But for now, he had done what he could. That was enough. The sun rose slowly over the human colony, casting long shadows on the cracked ground. The world around Ben was quiet, as usual. The settlement was small, but it had its own charm, a peaceful rhythm that had been established over many years. People worked, traded, and survived as best they could, always looking for ways to adapt to a universe that had become unforgiving. Ben had returned to his stall early, his mind still on the two alien girls. What they had said still lingered in his thoughts. He had given them food, yes, but their offer had caught him off guard. Offering their bodies in exchange for food? It seemed strange, almost unbelievable. Ben wasn't sure if they were simply desperate or if there was something more to their words. His gut told him that they weren't trying to deceive him, but he couldn't ignore the unease that filled his chest. For the next few hours, Ben kept busy with his usual work, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the girls. We had told them. They didn't need to repay him, but their insistence haunted him. He wasn't a fool. He knew they were from a powerful species, one that had once controlled many planets in the galaxy. Seeing them now, so weak and vulnerable, was a stark reminder of how quickly things could change. In the end, even the mightiest empires could fall, leaving nothing but ruins behind. Around noon, the two girls returned. Ben looked up from his work as they approached, both of them a little stronger than before. Their faces were still drawn with hunger, but their eyes seemed clearer, sharper. The taller girl, Arya, gave him a weak smile as she stepped up to the stall. Lyra, the shorter one, hung back, still wary but grateful. We wanted to thank you again, Arya said, her voice soft but steady. For the food. We didn't expect you to help us, but we didn't know what else to do. Ben nodded, still uncertain of their true intentions. He'd helped them because it was the right thing to do, not because he expected anything in return. But there was something about them, something that made him want to trust them, even though he knew better. He couldn't shake the feeling that their offer was more than just a plea for survival. I told you before. You don't owe me anything, Ben said, keeping his voice kind but firm. You're just two people who need help, that's all. There's no need to make any promises to me. Arya's eyes lowered for a moment, and Ben could see the weight of her thoughts. It was clear she wasn't sure how to approach him. Oh. Lyra, standing just behind her, shifted nervously, as if waiting for something. We don't have a lot of choices, Arya continued, her voice trembling slightly. You helped us, and we can't just take your kindness without offering something in return. Ben sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. You've already given me enough your thanks, your trust. It's more than enough. But Arya shook her head, and for a moment she looked as though she was struggling with something deeper, something that went beyond just hunger or survival. We don't have a place to go. We don't have anyone left. The last of our people are scattered, hiding, or dead. The war took everything. Ben didn't respond right away, sensing that there was more to this than what she was saying. She wasn't just talking about food or shelter anymore. She was talking about something else, something that reached deeper into her soul. "We've lost everything," Arya said, her voice growing stronger. "And now we have nothing left but our bodies. Can't survive on our own. We need your help, and we need to offer something in return." This is all we have left to offer. Ben didn't know how to respond. His heart went out to them. It was clear that their species, once mighty and proud, was now broken. They were no longer the powerful beings they once were. They were just two girls, desperate to survive in a galaxy that had turned its back on them. "I don't want your bodies," Ben said gently, shaking his head. "That's not what I'm asking for. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. You don't need to repay me." But Arya's eyes were filled with something that Ben couldn't quite read. "You don't understand," she said softly. "We are from a race of warriors, of diplomats, of leaders. We were once respected, but now we are nothing if we don't find a way to survive. We will die, and that's why we're offering ourselves. It's not just about food, it's about survival." Lyra finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know where else to go. We don't know anyone else who would help us. You're the first human to show us kindness. We don't want to be alone anymore." Ben could see the pain in their eyes, the hopelessness that filled their hearts. He had lived through hardships before, but never like this. He had never been in a position where someone was so desperate, so broken, that they would offer themselves just to survive. "I can't accept that," Ben said firmly, though his heart ached for them. "I won't take advantage of you. That's not what I want. You've already given me something much more important than anything else. Your trust. That's enough." For a moment, there was silence between them. The wind picked up, blowing dust across the ground, but neither of them moved. Arya's eyes searched his face, as if looking for something, a sign that he understood. She didn't find it right away. Instead, she seemed to shrink back, as though the weight of her people's downfall was too much to bear. We don't know what else to do," Arya finally said, her voice shaky. "Please, we just need to survive." Ben could see the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty, and it made his heart heavy. He had given them food, yes, but their offer of themselves was something he couldn't accept. Not like this. Not when they had so much more to offer in terms of their strength, their knowledge, and their spirit. They were not just bodies. They were survivors. They were capable of much more. "You're not just what you offer in trade," Ben said gently, taking a step closer to them. "You're more than that. I don't want your bodies. I want you to survive. I want you to rebuild." Arya blinked, surprised by his words. It was clear they hadn't heard anything like this in a long time. "Survive," Ben said with quiet determination. "Find a new way forward. We all have to, together." The two girls stood still, as if trying to process what he had said. After a long pause, Arya spoke, her voice soft but filled with something new hope. "Together," she repeated, as though the word had power. Ben nodded. "Yes, together." The days that followed were filled with quiet change. Ben's small stall became a place of more than just food, became a space for new ideas, new hopes. Arya and Lyra worked with him, though they still kept to themselves, as if unsure of how to fit into this strange new world they had found themselves in. Despite their previous offer, Ben refused to let them feel indebted to him. They were still healing, both physically and emotionally, and he knew they needed time. Each day, Ben saw them grow a little stronger. They were no longer the thin, hollow-eyed figures who had come to his stall weeks before. The food he had given them had done its job, but it wasn't just the food that was helping them. It was the way the humans treated them with kindness and respect. The colony had slowly begun to accept Arya and Lyra, understanding that they weren't enemies, but survivors like themselves. Ben had kept his promise to himself. He would help them find a way to survive, without taking advantage of their desperation. Over time, the two girls became more active, helping out around the stall, offering their knowledge and skills when they could. Lyra, the quieter of the two, had a knack for organizing things, while Arya, the taller one, had an eye for details. She helped Ben sort the supplies, making sure that everything was ready when people came to buy. They were still alien, still strangers in this world. How but they were starting to feel like part of the community. One afternoon, as Ben was packing up his stall for the day, Arya approached him with a question that surprised him. "Ben," she began, her voice hesitant, "what if we could help more than just your stall? What if we could help rebuild?" Ben raised an eyebrow at her. "Rebuild what?" "The colony." Arya nodded. "Yes. There's more to this world than just survival. I know we have lost a lot, but maybe we can help others who are still out there. Maybe we can find a way to make things better." Ben looked at her for a long moment, his heart swelling with a mix of admiration and concern. He knew that Arya and Lyra had once been part of a great civilization, but that civilization was gone. They had nothing left but each other, and the desire to find a purpose. Ben understood that feeling. Everyone in the colony had to fight for something, even if it wasn't always clear what that something was. "I think you're right," Ben said slowly. "There's more we can do, but it won't be easy. The galaxy isn't kind, especially to those who have already fallen." Arya's eyes brightened, and she took a step closer to him. "We don't have to do it alone. We have you, and we have the people here." Ben nodded. "You're not wrong about that. It's going to take more than just food. It's going to take trust, cooperation, and a lot of hard work." Lyra, who had been standing nearby, joined the conversation. She looked at Arya and Ben, her expression thoughtful. "I think we can start small," she said softly. "We can build relationships with others. Show them that we're not just survivors. We're capable of contributing, of making things better." Ben smiled. It was the first time he had seen them so sure of themselves, so confident in their abilities. They weren't just offering themselves for food anymore. They were offering their knowledge, their skills, their determination to make the world a better place. He could see it in their eyes. They had something to give, even if they didn't know exactly how to do it yet. "We can start by helping those who need it the most," Ben said. "The injured, the sick. We can provide food, sure, but we can also provide something more: hope." For the next few days, the trio worked together to organize food drives, gathering supplies for the people in the colony who were struggling the most. They used what little they had to provide for the injured, the elderly, and the sick. Arya and Lyra used their knowledge of their people's healing techniques, teaching the humans how to tend to wounds and illnesses that had been left untreated for too long. Slowly, they earned the trust of the colony, one act of kindness at a time. Despite the challenges they faced, there was a growing sense of purpose. Ben began to notice that the colony felt different. It felt alive again. People were coming together, helping one another. The walls of fear and suspicion that had once divided them were slowly starting to come down. And through it all, Arya and Lyra stood beside him, their determination never faltering. But it wasn't just the colony that was changing. Ben himself began to change too. He had always been content with his small stall, his simple life. Now, he felt like he was part of something larger. He was a part of a movement, a new way of life. Laying with Arya and Lyra by his side, he felt like they could accomplish anything. One evening, as they sat together around a small fire outside Ben's stall, Arya spoke again, this time with more conviction. "We've learned so much from you, Ben," she said. "From the humans here. We've learned that survival isn't just about food or shelter. It's about finding a reason to keep going, even when everything seems lost." Ben nodded, his gaze softening as he looked at the two girls. "I think we've all learned something from each other," he said. "I didn't think I could ever be part of something bigger than myself. But now, I think we're all in this together." Lyra smiled for the first time in what felt like ages. It was a small smile, but it was real. Together, she echoed, "That's all that matters." As the stars began to twinkle above them, the three of them sat in comfortable silence, knowing that they had taken the first steps toward something greater. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, they had hope. The sun was setting, casting a soft glow over the small colony. Ben stood outside his stall, watching as the last few customers left for the evening. The day had been busy, full of people coming to trade, ask for help, or simply exchange stories. But it was different now. There was a sense of change in the air. The colony was slowly coming together, and Ben couldn't help but feel proud of the part he had played in it. Arya and Lyra had been working tirelessly alongside him. They had become more than just survivors. They were leaders now, offering guidance to those in need. They had shared their knowledge of healing, farming, and even diplomacy. The people of the colony had started to trust them, to see them as more than just two hungry aliens who had come asking for food. They were respected now, and Ben had to admit they had earned it. But despite all the progress they had made, Ben knew there was still so much to do. The colony was far from being a perfect place. There were still people who struggled, who needed more than just food or supplies. There were still threats out there, forces that could destroy everything they had worked for. But Ben felt a fire inside him, a drive to push forward, to build something better for the future. And he wasn't alone that evening. After the stall had been closed and the colony was settling into its nighttime routine, Ben met with Arya and Lyra by the small campfire outside the stalls. The flickering flames cast shadows on their faces, but their expressions were filled with purpose. "We've made progress. But it's only the beginning," Ben said, his voice steady but determined. "There's a lot of work left to do." Arya nodded, her eyes reflecting the flames of the fire. "We've learned a lot from the humans here," she said, her voice quiet but filled with strength. "The importance of community, of working together. We were taught that we must be strong alone, but now we see the value of strength in unity. We don't have to rebuild the galaxy alone." Lyra, who had been sitting in silence, added, "There are many more like us out there, people who have lost everything, people who need help. Maybe we can find them and bring them together. We can create something more than just a colony. We can create a network of survivors." Ben smiled at the thought. It was a bold idea, but it was possible. There were people across the galaxy who had been left behind, abandoned after the fall of so many empires. And there were still those who needed guidance, who needed hope. "We'll need more resources," Ben said. "We'll need food, supplies, ships to get to other colonies. It won't be easy, but I think we can do it." Arya's green eyes lit up with a fierce spark. "We're not alone anymore, Ben. There are others who want to fight back. We just don't know where to start. We can be their guide." Ben nodded. "We've already taken the first step. Now we need to make sure we keep moving forward. It's one day at a time." As the fire crackled in front of them, the three of them sat in thoughtful silence. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about rebuilding what had been lost, about creating something new in the ashes of what once was. Ben didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of hope that they could change things. Together, over the next few weeks, Ben, Arya, and Lyra began their plan. They reached out to nearby settlements, offering help and support to those in need. At first, the response was slow. Many people were still skeptical, still afraid of outsiders, especially after everything they had been through. But Arya and Lyra's reputation as survivors, as people who had rebuilt their own lives from nothing, started to spread.
Slowly,
more and more people joined their cause. Word of the small but growing network of survivors began to spread across the galaxy. Arya and Lyra had once been part of a great empire, and now they were helping to create something new. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something that mattered. It was a place for those who had nowhere else to go, a place where people could find safety, food, and most importantly, hope. One evening, as Ben was working at his stall, a small group of travelers arrived at the colony. They were weary, looking as though they had been traveling for days. The leader of the group, a woman with long brown hair and a tired face, stepped forward and spoke to Ben. "We heard about what you're doing here," the woman said. "We've been searching for a place like this for months. We need your help." Looked up at her, his heart swelling with a sense of pride. He had heard stories of people struggling to survive out there, and now here they were. The help they needed was exactly what Arya and Lyra had been working toward. He gestured for them to come closer. "We can help you," Ben said, his voice calm but filled with conviction. "You're not alone anymore." Arya and Lyra joined them shortly after, and as the travelers sat down, they began to share their stories. They were survivors of a fallen colony, just like Arya and Lyra. They had lost everything: families, homes, the hope of a future. But now they had found something they thought was long gone. They had found a place where they could start over. As the group sat around the fire, exchanging stories and plans for the future, Ben realized that what they were building was more than just a survival effort. It was a new way of life. A community that cared for each other, that worked together. For a better tomorrow, Arya and Lyra sat beside Ben, their eyes filled with something that had been missing for so long: peace. They were no longer alone. They were part of something bigger. They had been through the worst the galaxy could throw at them. And now they were helping to create something that would last a future for everyone. "We've come a long way," Arya said quietly, looking at the people around the fire. "But this is just the beginning." Ben nodded, his heart filled with a sense of purpose. "Yes," he agreed, "just the beginning." And for the first time in a long time, they all believed it. The sun rose over the colony as it had every morning since Ben had arrived, but today felt different. There was a new energy in the air, something Ben couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just the heat of the sun or the quiet hum of the colony waking up. It was something deeper, something that had been building for weeks. Slowly taking shape, the word about the growing group of survivors was spreading. More and more people from nearby settlements began arriving, looking for safety, for food, for hope. Some came with empty hands, tired from their travels. Others brought what little they had left: a bag of supplies, a broken tool, a family heirloom, anything that could be used to contribute to the new community that was slowly taking form. The first few weeks had been difficult. There was always something else to deal with: food shortages, disagreements, or the ever-present fear that the outside world would come crashing down on them. But Ben, Arya, and Lyra had worked together, tirelessly organizing, providing what they could, in earning the trust of the colony. It hadn't been easy, but they were beginning to see results. People were starting to believe in what they were building. They were starting to believe in each other. Ben had learned many things during his time on the colony. He had learned that it wasn't just survival that mattered, it was the relationships between people. It was the bonds they formed in times of hardship, the way they came together to help one another, even when it seemed like there was nothing left to give. It was about trusting others, and in turn, trusting yourself. As he walked through the busy streets, Ben saw the changes taking place. Children played outside, their laughter ringing through the air. Adults worked together, fixing broken structures or sharing food. The whole colony seemed to be alive with the promise of something better. And in the center of it all stood Arya and Lyra, their presence a beacon of hope for everyone around them. Arya and Lyra had become leaders in their own right. They had taught the people of the colony how to adapt, how to survive, and how to thrive. They were more than just two lost girls now. They were symbols of what could be achieved even in the darkest of times. And while they never asked for that title, they had earned it with their hard work, its determination, and the willingness to help anyone who asked. Ben had been working with them on a new project, one that would bring the colony even closer together. They had started teaching the children of the settlement, not just about survival, but about the things that mattered most: compassion, teamwork, and the value of each individual. It wasn't just about food or supplies anymore. It was about raising the next generation to be stronger, kinder, and more connected than ever before. That afternoon, as Ben and the others gathered around a large table in the center of the settlement, the sound of footsteps interrupted their quiet planning. A young man, one of the newer arrivals, entered the room, looking out of breath. "Ben," he said, his voice urgent, "you need to come with me. It's the outskirts. There's something happening. We don't know what yet, but we need to act fast." Ben stood up quickly, his heart pounding. He had been waiting for this moment, the moment when the peace they had worked so hard to build would be threatened. He exchanged a quick glance with Arya and Lyra. They too stood up, their faces serious. They were ready. They had learned how to face challenges before, and they would face this one together. "What's going on?" Ben asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The young man shook his head. "We don't know yet, but it looks like some people from outside the colony are causing trouble. They've been spotted near the borders, Ben nodded. We'll need to act quickly. Gather anyone you can. Tell them to meet at the central square. Within moments, word had spread, and the people of the colony began to gather. Some had weapon stools and makeshift defenses they had been able to salvage. Others brought food, medical supplies, anything they thought might help. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. As they walked to the central square, Ben felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He had never asked to be a leader. He had never sought out this role. But now, he was in the center of it all, and he couldn't turn back. He couldn't let the colony fall back into the same chaos that had destroyed so many other civilizations. When they arrived, Ben saw the others already gathered, waiting for his orders. Arya and Lyra stood by his side, ready to help however they could. Ben took a deep breath, scanning the crowd. These were the people who had chosen to fight for something better. They had chosen to stay, to rebuild. And now, they were ready to protect it. We need to stay calm, Ben said, his voice steady and strong. We don't know what we're dealing with yet, but we will not back down. We've worked too hard to let anyone tear us apart. Arya stepped forward. We've come together because we believe in each other. No matter who comes for us, we stand as one. Lyra nodded, her eyes focused. We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has been left behind. We fight for our future. The crowd murmured in agreement. There was a strength in their unity, something that Ben had seen growing over the past few weeks. We're no longer just survivors, they were a community. And communities, Ben knew, were powerful. As the first signs of movement were spotted on the outskirts of the colony, Ben felt his heart race. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was clear. They were ready. Ready to defend what they had built, ready to stand together no matter the cost. As the distant sounds of footsteps grew louder, Ben looked to his left and right. Arya and Lyra were standing beside him, their faces calm but determined. They had faced down the worst that the galaxy could throw at them before, and now they would face it together once more. The colony was ready. No matter what came next, they would fight for their home, their future, and each other. The sound of footsteps grew louder, echoing through the stillness of the colony. Ben stood with Arya and Lyra at the center of the square, surrounded by the people who had become more than just neighbors. They were a family, a community that had come together through the toughest of times. Now they were about to face the unknown. Ben took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had faced many challenges since he first set foot in this colony, but nothing like this. It was one thing to fight for survival, but it was another thing entirely to protect what they had built. He couldn't afford to let fear take over, not now, not when so much was at stake. As the figures on the outskirts of the colony drew closer, Ben's eyes scanned the crowd. Most of the settlers stood quietly, some clutching whatever tools or makeshift weapons they had gathered. They were ready, but Ben knew they needed more than just weapons. They needed strength and unity. They needed to stand together, not just as individuals, but as a collective force that could not be broken. Arya stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension in the air. We are not afraid. We've come this far because we've learned to rely on each other. If anyone thinks they can destroy what we've built, they're wrong. We will fight for our future. Lyra, her eyes narrowed with determination, spoke next. Our home, our families, and our freedom are worth more than anything they can threaten us with. We've survived the worst, and we will not let anyone take that away from us. Ben nodded, his heart swelling with pride. He wasn't just standing here as a leader. He was standing here as part of a community that had earned the right to defend itself. It was a new kind of strength, born from the ashes of their past. And it was more powerful than anything they had faced before. The first group of outsiders came into view, their figures emerging from the shadows. They were heavily armed, their movements slow and deliberate. But there was something in there. Posture, something that told Ben they weren't here just to talk. They were here to take something that wasn't theirs to take. Ben didn't hesitate, stepped forward, standing tall in front of the others. His voice was steady. As he addressed the group, though his heart raced in his chest, "You're not welcome here," he said. We've worked too hard to rebuild, to create something better. We don't want trouble, but if you're here to cause it, you'll find that we won't back down. The leader of the outsiders, a tall man with a cold, calculating expression, stepped forward. He glanced at Ben with a look of indifference, then spoke in a voice that was low and threatening. You don't understand. This colony is nothing but a waste of resources. We've come to claim what we need. Ben clenched his fists, ready to defend his people. This colony isn't yours to take. It's ours, and we will protect it with everything we've got. The leader's eyes flicked toward Arya and Lyra, who stood beside Ben, their faces unwavering. He sneered, You really think you can fight us? We've destroyed entire cities? What makes you think you can stand against us? Arya's voice rang out, full of strength and defiance. We are not afraid of you. You may have destroyed cities, but you cannot destroy us. We have something you will never have, the will to fight for what's ours. The leader's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. For a moment, it seemed like he was considering his next move. He glanced back at his group, as if waiting for a signal. Ben knew that hesitation could be dangerous. They needed to act quickly before the situation escalated. Ready yourselves, Ben called to the settlers behind him. We stand together. No one is going to take this place from us. As the outsider leader gave a subtle nod, his group began to move forward, slowly encircling the colony. The tension in the air was thick, and Ben's instincts screamed that they were on the edge of something dangerous. But he didn't falter. He looked at Arya and Lyra, and they both gave him silent nods of reassurance. They were ready. Ben stepped forward again, his voice strong and clear. We don't want violence, but we won't let you threaten our home. The outsider leader hesitated for a moment longer, then stepped back, signaling his group to halt. We'll give you one chance, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Join us. Help us take control of this place, and we can share the resources. But if you resist, Ben didn't wait for him to finish. He spoke firmly, with a quiet but powerful determination. We will never join you. This is our home, and we'll defend it with our lives. At those words, the outsiders began to shift nervously. They hadn't expected such a strong response from the settlers. They had thought that Ben and his people would crumble under pressure. But instead, they were met with a wall of unity and strength that the outsiders hadn't anticipated. The leader's face twisted into a snarl. You'll regret this, he spat, turning to his group. Take them down. But before they could make their move, the settlers were already in motion. Arya, Lyra, and Ben stood at the front, leading the charge. The makeshift weapons the settlers had gathered were crude, but they were effective. As the two sides clashed, it became clear that the settlers were fighting not just for survival, but for something far more important, their future. The battle was hard fought. But it wasn't long before the outsiders realized they had underestimated the strength of the community. They were trying to conquer. The settlers, fueled by their belief in each other and their right to defend what they had built, fought with a fierceness that pushed the outsiders back. By the time the sun set, the outsiders had retreated, their plans thwarted by the unbreakable unity of the settlers. Ben, Arya, and Lyra stood side by side, their eyes watching as the enemy disappeared into the distance. They had won, not just the battle, but a victory that meant something far more significant. As the colony began to rebuild once again, the people knew that this wasn't the end. There would be more challenges ahead, more threats to face. Well, they also knew that they were no longer alone. They had each other, and together, they were strong enough to face anything the galaxy might throw their way. And for the first time since the collapse of their civilizations, Arya and Lyra knew that they had something worth fighting for, a future they could call their own.